by way of introduction, my name is Frank Guinan, like it says on the screen, and I'm a small business person like a lot of you. I work out of my home office in Yarmouthport, and the primary service I provide is one-on-one training to small business owners, to bookkeepers and managers in QuickBooks. And I actually sell the product from my website. You'll see my card in the booklet. You can purchase the product from my website, so I help people set it up, install it, train them to use it. This time of year, I'm sure many of you are getting ready for taxes. How many of you currently have QuickBooks? Virtually everyone. So QuickBooks, one advantage of it is you can use it to print out the reports necessary for your CPA to prepare your tax return. So this time of year, I'm helping people like yourself get ready to do that. I have clients as small as one-person carpenters, plumbers, husband and wife teams, to multi-million-dollar contractors and larger companies. That's how great QuickBooks is. It can work with the smaller mom-and-pop kind of company and the larger multi-million-dollar 50-plus employees. And we'll be going over how that applies in both sessions today. So the way the presentation is going to work today is I gave you all a binder, and that has a copy of every slide that I'm going to present today, and that's for you to keep. The intent of this morning's session is that you should be able to leave here this morning and know the basics. How to record a check, how to record a deposit, and how to reconcile your bank account. That's really the ABCs of QuickBooks. It's really on one level. That's all you really need to know. The afternoon session, how many of you are going to be here for the afternoon session? Okay. The afternoon session is geared specifically to contractors, and it's going to go over contractor-specific features. So it's good you're going to be here for both because one builds off of the other. During the session, if you do have questions, we are being videotaped, so I guess my process is speak good and loud, but I'm going to repeat your question, and then obviously I'll do my best to answer it. If I'm not able to answer it today, I have had stumpers. You can come up at the break, which will be approximately a couple hours from now, or when this is over, it's about noon time, this should be over. I can take down your contact information and I can research the question and then contact you with the specific answer. Also at the end, I'm going to be handing out an evaluation. What you're going to see in both sessions today is basically a progression of feedback I've gotten from people like yourself of the good, bad, and the ugly of the seminars. So I really do try to be attentive to what you'd like to see in all of that. So I take these very seriously. So please make sure you fill it out when we're done. Now, are there any questions before we get started? Okay. Okay, my objectives for this morning, first off, is to present a broad overview of what QuickBooks is all about. Second is to demonstrate the key setup features. My mantra is, if you don't set up QuickBooks properly, it's really on a level going to be useless, or will provide irrelevant information. So setup is key. And as I alluded to earlier, I'm going to show you the basics of recording sales, of recording your expenses, and then reconciling your bank account. So as an overview, what is QuickBooks? First and foremost, it's not money, it's not Quicken. This is a full-featured accounting package that relies on double entry accounting. If you set up the program properly, if you record like a check or an invoice, QuickBooks will take care of the other side of the entry. If you don't set it up properly, then it's basically garbage in, garbage out. And I've seen people, one of the signs that if you're not using the program properly is negative numbers. If you see negative numbers in your chart of accounts or in any of your reports, more likely than not, you've done something wrong. So that's one of the telltale signs. So some of the other features of QuickBooks is that on the sales side of things, it can handle estimates. We'll be going over that in the second session. It can handle invoicing. and your accounts receivable. And on the other side, it can handle bills and accounts payable. It also has a fixed asset management system for any of you that might be part of larger companies that have lots of equipment. I was just sitting down with someone yesterday. Actually, they weren't a contractor, but they had baseball equipment and things. And one of the cool things about this feature is that you can put your equipment in, put the date that you purchased it, put in the serial number. Because if you've all had the experience around insurance time, they want a listing of your vehicles and equipment and anything you've taken off the road or put new on the road. QuickBooks can keep track of that for you. For any of you with inventory, QuickBooks does a pretty decent job of managing inventory. It's really geared more towards the in and out inventory, although it will do some assembly type inventory for any of you that do any kind of woodwork or assembly, cabinetry, that kind of thing. QuickBooks can handle that. One of its strengths, and we'll be going over this in the second session, so if you're not signed up for the second session, QuickBooks does an excellent job of job costing, and I'll be going over that in detail in the afternoon session. It will also keep track of sales tax. It'll record employee time. You can even keep track of vendor time if you wanted to. It'll amortize the loans. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people from a data entry standpoint is when they're recording their loan payments, they usually put it all to an expense, which is improper. It should be broken out between principal and interest, the principal going to the balance sheet. It's not an expense. QuickBooks has a loan amortization system which will break that out for you automatically. And finally, payroll. Again, I was sitting down with someone yesterday. One of their interests was job costing. And if you can, I strongly recommend using payroll internally versus a third-party payroll. It just makes life a lot easier in job costing your employees. So the point of this list I gave you is that pretty much anything and everything you want to do as a small business, QuickBooks can do. There are two primary editions. I'll be going over a couple of other variations in the afternoon session, but for the beginner session today, for most beginners, QuickBooks Pro and QuickBooks Career are the prime choices that you want to consider. So QuickBooks Pro is approximately $199.95. Now I'm what's called a certified QuickBooks Pro advisor. What that means is around this time of year, I am tested on the latest and greatest in QuickBooks to make sure that I'm maintaining my expert status. And because of that, through my website, if you purchase the product, you're entitled to a 10% discount. Now to put that in perspective, if you pull out 10% from that, that's about $180. That's equivalent to what you get at Staples. The advantage to going through my website is that you can download it right through the website, so you can have the program up and running in about 20 minutes. Instead of running out to Staples in this weather or whatever. And some people do prefer a box, and they do prefer a CD. You can order that through the website, or again, you can go to Staples and get all of that. But the price here is equivalent to what you get there. Now, when you purchase the product, this was asked earlier, through your license, assuming it's for one company, okay, so it's ABC Contracting Company, if that's your company, you can install QuickBooks on as many computers as you want. So if you had your home computer and your office computer and you had a couple of computers in the office, you can install it. The license grants you the option to install it on as many computers as you want for ABC Company. However, if you had the owner and the payables person and maybe the owner's wife wanted to use it at the same time, you have to purchase multiple licenses. Okay, so the key here is the issue of who's using it at the same time. So QuickBooks does extend to you a discount if you purchase a 3-user value pack. Instead of close to $600, it's $550 for a 3-user value pack. And if you needed more licenses, it'd just be incrementally at the $199 plus the discount. Now the list here relating to QuickBooks Pro just gives you a sense of some of the functionality within QuickBooks Pro. And again, the point of this list is if you look through the list, QuickBooks Pro can do pretty much anything and everything you want to do as a small business from an accounting perspective. Some of the things that I want to point out is it does work with Microsoft Office. It doesn't work with WordPerfect. It doesn't work with Microsoft Works. It works with Microsoft Office. And when a lot of my clients are contractors, And what I have observed is a lot of you like to use Excel. Okay, you take your data out of QuickBooks, or maybe you do your estimates in Excel. QuickBooks does work with Office. You can export reports out of QuickBooks into Excel. You can bring lists from Excel into QuickBooks. It also works with Word. If you wanted to send out a letter to your customers, if you wanted to send out a proposal to your customers, Word will take the customer list and integrate that with a letter template, and you can then send the letter out. So it does work with Word and Excel very nicely. So if you're already comfortable, you already have some letters designed and some spreadsheets and all that, they will integrate. I'm also often asked, what about data? Can you get data from Excel into QuickBooks? Yes and no. Yes, you can if you want to pay an arm and a leg for it. It's to get the data in. I've looked at the process and I've done some type of work like that. And from my experience perspective, it's pretty sophisticated. I haven't known anyone who's done it. You would have to pay a programmer to make sure, because if you're off by a comma, a period, the data will not go in properly. So someone really has to code the data coming into QuickBooks properly, but it is possible. And again, at any price kind of a thing. So generally what I recommend, if people are like, well, I've got all this data in this other program, and I've got all this stuff in Excel or whatever, I tell them, well, pick up a point in time, stop the entry into that program or Excel, and then start fresh with QuickBooks from that point going forward. I wouldn't go to the expense of trying to import everything into QuickBooks. A couple other features I'll point out is the download feature. I have a lot of clients that use this. How many of you use online banking? Okay, good few of you. I recommend considering if the nature of your transactions within your company, if you've got a lot of debit card transactions, if you have a lot of credit card sales, if you have a lot of wire transactions, in other words, transactions not driven by a deposit slip or a check, if you have a lot of those, then online banking will be a good consideration for you. Most banks offer for free, and what the process is simply all the transactions that are sitting in the bank on the website, you can then download into QuickBooks. And for like debit transactions, if you're going to Exxon and getting gas, and going to Staples to get office supplies, and going to Shepley's to get materials, every time QuickBooks sees Shepley's, it's going to say, hey, the last time you did that, that was to materials. Do you want me to put it to materials again? You can say yes. And so if you had a half a dozen transactions to Shepley's, they go in automatically against materials. So it just saves the data entry. So if you're not using online banking and the interface with QuickBooks, I would recommend if that's kind of your situation. For any of you with company credit cards, again, another feature, American Express, Capital One, Discover, all of them. Again, you can download the transactions from the credit card website and put them into QuickBooks. You have to get in there one way or another. This way they'll go in automatically, again, the same process as for the banks. So I strongly recommend that you investigate that. It's a very great and easy to use feature. The other that I see a lot of clients like to use is number 10 there, is about emailing invoices. I don't send anything by mail. I don't give anything by paper. All my clients I bill through email. You can save virtually any form in QuickBooks as a PDF, which is a universal format that anyone can access. You attach it to an email and send your invoice out to them, and you can use Outlook to keep track of the fact that you sent them that invoice. Say, oh, I never got it. Well, yeah, you did. So that's the other change since I think 2007 was that when you send it out of QuickBooks, it'll save it in the sent items folder in Outlook. So it'll save a copy automatically in Outlook for it in the newer version. And that's pretty much the extent of the list that I'm going to go over. Any questions on anything in that list? Yes?
You said that it'll save a copy of it in Outlook. Is there any other emails that are integrated with it? Like, I mean, I use Eudora for my email.
I don't think so, no. It's just Outlook.
And, well, you also can just send, like, when you have a bill in front of you and you hit print, you can email them too.
Yeah, the lingo. In QuickBooks, an invoice is a customer bill. So when I say invoice, I'm referring to...
Oh, no, I understood that. I just, I've been running 2007 in another version, and a lot of times I'm able to just print, pull up a report and email it straight from within QuickBooks.
Right.
Do you know, does that save it anyway to show me that I did it?
Yeah, if you have Outlook, it'll save it in the same time, but
without
otherwise, no.
Outlook, it's not saving anything.
It goes into cyber purgatory and just...
I just didn't know if there was a way I could look back and some...
No, unfortunately, no. There is a service you can sign up for. That's the free service built in QuickBooks in the older versions, that if you send something out, it'll send it for you through their email service, but you can pay extra money and then you can see what you've sent. But the free part of the service, no, it goes and you hope it makes it. So you saying you have 2007?
Yeah, I have 2007.
So it must be the 2008 that works with Outlook. Do you have Outlook?
I don't even use Outlook, no.
Oh, okay.
I also have 2009. I haven't looked at that.
Any other questions on that? QuickBooks Premier is one we're going to touch on in greater detail in the afternoon session. But this is the industry-specific solution. So they have one specifically for contractors. And as you see, it's a little more expensive. It's $399.95. But they're a little more aggressive on the discount. It's a 20% discount. Again, you can have up to 5 people using it simultaneously, and there's a discount for 3 users. The primary reason you'd want to use QuickBooks Premier is if you're a hands-on owner, manager, who really likes to dig in and pull out a lot of information through the reports. What they've done is query their largest customer base are contractors. It's 30% of their business. Okay, just alone by themselves. So what they've done is they constantly query contractors, get them in a room and saying, what do you like about the product, what don't you like about the product? So they have updated the program and created reports and features that are geared specifically towards you all. If your needs are very simplistic, you come out of the session today and say, that's all I need to do, then QuickBooks Pro is fine. But if you find that you're really hands-on, you really want in-depth reporting and some of the features I'll go over in the afternoon, then you'd want to pick QuickBooks Premier. These are some of the other industries that the QuickBooks Premier is geared towards. So if any of you fall on the list, I assume most of you are contractors, but there are some others that it's geared towards. So take a look at that list, and if you fall on that, you might consider it. So any questions on that section? I put this section in because the primary problems people have using QuickBooks, as I alluded to in the beginning, this is not Quicken or Money. Quicken or Money, you can make one-sided entries and you're done. In QuickBooks, like I said, if you make one entry according to the setup, it'll go to another place within the program. So what happens is people don't fully, when they're setting up the program, don't fully understand the accounting. And unfortunately, things will go in the wrong places, like the most simplistically, putting a loan payment entirely against interest expense instead of breaking it out between the loan balance and the interest expense. That's a very common one. So I put this section in here to just touch on some of the basics of accounting and how that integrates with QuickBooks. So fundamentally, what QuickBooks is, what accounting is, it's just a tool. It's just a tool for you to understand how your business is doing at any particular point in time. Am I making money? Am I losing money? Am I upside down on my debt? Or do I have some decent equity? That's all that accounting does. And those are questions that should be answered for you on a regular basis. What's my cash balance? That's all that accounting is intended to do, is to help you manage your business more effectively. The primary equation in accounting is assets equals liabilities plus equity. And we all experience that on a daily basis, whether we're in business or not. Our primary asset as people is our home. The liability is our debt to the bank. And the equity is what we're all hoping is growing and accumulating for us for retirement or to pass on to our kids or whatever. So the same thing in business. The assets of a business are simply the cash you have, your receivables, your equipment, building, land, things like that. The liabilities are what you owe the bank, what you owe any people who have loaned you money. And the equity is your part in the business, along with any other owners you might have in business. It's as simple as that. So that's what QuickBooks, that's what accounting is doing at any particular time. It's putting it in one of these three buckets. All your transactions are affecting your assets, your liabilities, or your equity. All double entry accounting means is that there's always two sides to an entry. So there's a debit and a credit, and QuickBooks does that for you automatically. So the key thing to make sure the debits and credits are going in the right places is to make sure the setup is done properly. Now this time of year, people are getting ready for the taxes, and they're generating their reports to give to their CPAs, and QuickBooks has the capability of generating your financial reports in two methods, the cash method and the accrual method. The cash method, quite simply, is what the bulk of you would use to give to your accountant. And all that means is a sale in QuickBooks is recognized when you get the cash. So if we did business today and I purchased a product or a service from you and wrote a check, on a cash basis, that sale is recognized. On the other side, if you went and paid for something, in particular like Shepley's, you came here today and bought some materials and you paid for it with cash, that expense would be recognized today and that will be on your financial statement. The accrual method is more consistent with how we all do business, is that we're not usually paid for 2 weeks, 30 days, 45 days, and we usually don't pay until we get paid. So the accrual method, I always recommend people, is you should generate reports on accrual method because that's more reflective of your reality. And it matches the inflow and outflow of your business on the basis of the accrual method. QuickBooks has the capability of taking your financial reports and alternating between the two. So this time of year, got to do it on a cash basis because that's what my accountant needs. You can print them out on a cash basis, but for your day-to-day management, you can switch it to the accrual basis. So it has the capability of doing both. The great thing about QuickBooks is that what they try to do is to make the accounting as simple as possible. So everything's happening behind the scenes, and they try to have forms in place for you to input the data that are very comfortable and customizable and familiar to you. So again, it all goes back to the setup. If you've done the setup properly, then the data entry is pretty basic, and I'll show that to you as we go. So that's it for the accounting. Not so bad, right? Yes?
Is there a problem talking between the accrual and cash rate?
Okay, the question asked, is there a problem, a difficulty in swapping between the cash and accrual method on the reports? Actually, no, it's just a click of a button. And like I said, depends on what you want to look at any given point in time. I try and train people that your reality is accrual method, so by default, I encourage people to have the information come up on the accrual basis. And then for tax time, you just switch them to the cash basis, print them out, and give them to the CPA.
My next question would be, do you use the accrual method if you assume a debt? You have to actually have fully paid it off yet?
Correct, a payable. So if you had a bill you received from Shepley's and it's for $10,000 and you paid half of it and you pay another half in 30 days, then yes, that would be the accrual method, and that would show up on the accrual method. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
My original accountant sent me, told me to set it up on the accrual. And then I have another accountant, she said it was the cash.
Okay.
Because I'm paying state sales tax before I get any money in, after I've invoiced the customer. And I don't know actually what to do, just is that all over, or should I be in cash? I don't have the assets right now to pay the sales tax at all times, so I get the customer.
Right. Well, you she asked a question here about sales tax. Okay? QuickBooks has the capability of tracking your sales tax on a cash basis and on an accrual basis. It won't go backwards. So if you were set up to do it on an accrual basis up through, let's just say we're in May right now. So you were through May, and then you wanted to, like, whoops, should have been doing it on a cash basis the whole time. It will not go backwards. You'll have to do your own calculation to figure out what the cash basis sales tax should have been. And then it will, from that point going forward, do the cash basis. So I'm going to go over a section here in preferences. And if you can remind me when I'm in preference, hey Frank, can you make sure you look at the sales tax? There's just a button there to indicate that you want to do it on the cash versus the accrual. For most of you, any of you who have sales tax, most of you should be on the accrual basis. That's the way the state likes to get the money. They don't care if you get paid or not. If you bill someone for $10,000, they want their $500 on it, whether you get your $10,000 or not. So from what I understand, most of you, if you have sales tax, would be on the accrual basis. So, but QuickBooks can do both, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay? Anyone else? Yes?
What if you're setting up something like a provision for bad debt? Would you be able to go into a general entry, or you have to use these forms that you borrow out for entering purchases and things like that?
The gentleman asked, the reason I'm repeating the questions is for the videotaping. I can hear. So he asked about the provision for bad debt. If you can do it through a journal entry, or do you need to use one of the forms? Just as a general rule, journal entries should be rarely used. Okay, CPAs love journal entries. And from my perspective, from a trainer and from helping you get all meaningful information, journal entries are limited in the depth of information that you can put in. So, no, I would not account for your bad debt through a journal entry. I would use one of the forms because you can use a credit memo to account for that, or there's another way to account for that that gets you the detailed information in QuickBooks that you need. So, no, I would not use a journal entry, and in general, you all shouldn't be using journal entries. The only time you use journal entries is at the end of the year when your accountant prepares your tax return. There will be some journal entries like depreciation expense. That's a basic journal entry that would go in, and that's the best way to put that is through a journal entry. So that's how I would handle the bad debt. Any other questions? Okay. So now I'm going to go over the basics of the setup, and these images that I put on the slides are somewhat purposeful because images have effect. And what I want to communicate here is that this guy's laying the foundation, and if anything here in this foundation was cracked, crumbling, weak, or not level, anything laid on top of it would have trouble. We could have a collapsed building, we could have water leaks, we could have a lot of issues. So, so the key that I want to emphasize, I said it in the beginning and I'll say it throughout the programs today, setup, 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 setup is the key. If you do the setup right, my God, QuickBooks flies, and it's really a blessing. If the setup isn't right, and that's a lot of times where come in, when it's not set up right, it's a headache and it's a real frustration to the data entry person as well as the owner using the data. Like most programs, first step in setting up the program is installing it. So as I alluded to earlier, you can purchase QuickBooks through my website, you can purchase QuickBooks through Intuit's website, and you can download it right there and have it up and running. As a general point of advice, when you download it, QuickBooks will enable you to call them 3 years from now. So if I downloaded it and 3 years, up to 3 years from now, if I drop my laptop and I lost my QuickBooks and I had to get a new computer, I could call up QuickBooks and say, hey, I trashed my laptop and I don't have a disk, so how can I get my QuickBooks back? I don't think. So for up to 3 years, they'll send you another one for free. After 3 years, you have to pay to get that, get a copy of it back to reload it. So generally what I tell people is when you download it, you just take a copy of the download and just put it on one of the thumb drives or put it on an external hard drive. So if you lose your laptop, you lose your desktop, you have that copy and you don't have to pay into it to give you another download. Okay? Or you can purchase a CD. Again, you can do that online. You actually have a choice. I want to download and a CD, or I just want a CD. Or again, you can go to Staples and purchase a CD there. Yes?
Do you sell QuickBooks for a Mac?
On my site, yeah. Any QuickBooks version you can get. Good question. She asked about QuickBooks for Mac. Yes, you can purchase it on my website. If you have a PC, please stay away from QuickBooks for Mac. It's really weak. They have not put the money into the products. There's a lot of things you can't do in the QuickBooks for Mac. They're years behind. Not put the money in the products. That's one of Mac's troubles when it comes to financial software. They're great for the graphics desktop publishing kind of stuff, but a lot of companies have not invested in their products for financially oriented products, and QuickBooks is one of them. So if you do have a PC option, get the QuickBooks for PC, not for the Mac. After you install the program, QuickBooks has what's called the Easy Step Interview. And it's just that. It's an easy step-by-step interview to help you set up QuickBooks. When you're done with the interview, anything and everything you need to use the program to get up and running is in there. So I strongly recommend that you would use this process. They indicate it would take about 30 minutes, so figure 30 minutes to an hour. There are some questions that the program will ask you, like your tax ID number, what kind of entity you are, your tax year, and so on. Are you on a cash sales tax basis or an accrual tax basis? It's one of the questions they will ask. So if you don't know the answers to those questions, have your CPA handy so you can call them up and get the answers to those questions. But those are the types of things that the interview will ask. QuickBooks will convert from Quicken, Peachtree, Microsoft Office Accounting, and so on. Some of the conversions are better than others. Quicken is a very weak conversion, and I don't recommend the conversion. Peachtree is a good conversion, and that's a good thing to do. And I have not seen Microsoft Office Accounting firsthand, so I'm not sure about that. Now, generally what I do is when I'm helping people set up, I'll skip the interview, and the people I work with will have the information I need, and I'm more into helping them customize it and get it up and running a little quicker than going through the 30 minutes. But if you're on your own, and there's so much help on here. See all these blue links? You click on those, it'll give you more information. So if you're a real self-starter and very motivated and have the time, then this will enable you to set it up exactly the way you want it. Okay, so part of what I'm going to be doing today is I will discuss something on the screen and then I'll demonstrate it in QuickBooks. So at this point I'm going to demonstrate the Easy Step Interview. By the way, we're working in QuickBooks 2008. There hasn't been much in... a gentleman, I think, asked me earlier about he has 2005. Should he upgrade and get the newer versions? You know the cliche, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if you're using it fine, and it's doing everything you want it to do, then don't upgrade. Why would you upgrade? I'll be touching on some features today. And if it's like, wow, I want to have that, then you might consider upgrading. But other than that, there's no reason to upgrade. If you're using QuickBooks Online Banking, if you're using payroll, and I think there's one other feature, if you're using it, the feature will stop working, and it'll force you to upgrade. So other than that, you could have the I've come across people with the 1999 version. So, you don't have to upgrade if you don't want. Okay, so if I go here to File, New Company, there's your Easy Step interview. So if you wanted to start the interview, you just click on that and then just follow the instructions and fill it out accordingly. And like I said, there's a lot of help along the way for you to answer the questions. Obviously, I'm not going to go through the interview today, but I will show you, by skipping the interview, I'll show you part of what they're going to ask. So you can go through this Easy Step interview, or what I'm going to go over after this section is the preferences. So by skipping the interview, it's going to require some minimum information indicated by the asterisk. So if we just do ABC, company, that's your tax ID, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not good. Yeah. Street address, 1, 2, 3, Main Street. City, we'll do Hyannis, Mass, 02601. Phone, 123-456-790. No fax. Net. So you're just tabbing through the fields. Technically, the only one that was required was the company name. Now, by filling these out, there are certain forms in QuickBooks that will take this information and put it on the forms, like your invoices. If you have payroll, it will take your tax ID and put it on payroll-related information. So the more you fill out, the better, if you're planning to use those kinds of features. Yes?
How do I know if my accountant has put all this different information? I don't think my email's in my setup. How can I go back to it to find this out?
Okay, hold that thought, and I'll show you how to do that. So I hit next. I think I need another digit here. Digit again. Okay. Then it asks you your entity type. A lot of you will either be a sole proprietorship or maybe an S corp, or an LLC. So we'll pick an S corp here. Your fiscal year, most of you, it will start in January, but any of you who are retailers, you might start in September or after the busy season kind of thing. So, but it defaults to January.
Excuse me, Frank.
Yes.
Is there a way to not put a date in there?
Put a date in where? Back here where it said January?
Yeah, because I'm doing a nonprofit, but it's two separate. It's not two separate companies, but it's two separate grants that I'm trying to do in one. So the dates are different.
No, you couldn't. No.
Yeah.
Because the question was asked this date here, January, if you had a couple things going on, in this case a nonprofit, for grants. I guess they're contingent on different parts of the year. So this date is critical for your reports. So if you generated your profit loss and said, I want to do it for this calendar year, it'll do January to December. If I indicated my fiscal year started in June, it would do it from June to May. So there's no way of putting two different dates in there.
So would I have to separate both companies and use two different files?
Well, generally, to do two different companies, the reason you want to do that if they have separate tax IDs. Okay, so what you might do is if it's not separate tax IDs, but it's two grants for the same company, it's just change the dates of your reports. So when you generate a report for one of the grants, you give them a certain amount of information, you date it according to the dates they want, and then the same report, just change the date on it. Does that make sense?
No, maybe that makes sense later.
Okay. I saw another hand. Yes? Yeah. Yeah, great question. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, so they don't just have one company, they might have 3 or 4 companies. Question is, how many companies will QuickBooks accommodate? As much as your computer system can accommodate. There's no limit. And you would want to create a separate QuickBooks company file for each separate tax ID number. Okay, so if you filed 5 tax returns, you'd have 5 QuickBooks company files. You'd be doing this 5 times. Now, if you have divisions, you have you're doing a DBA, and you're doing your DBA as 2 or 3 different entities, but they're all under that one tax ID, you'd only do this once. You have one QuickBooks file. That's what I would recommend. You could do them separately if you wanted, but you lose some of the reporting capabilities by having all the reports in 3 different files. Yes?
How would you do that?
How would you do what?
Like, for instance, if you have your name, DBA, and you have 2 different businesses, how do you put them both in the same QuickBooks file instead of having 2 different programs?
You would use the class feature. There's a class feature in QuickBooks, which we will go over in detail in the second session. So class is basically used to indicate different divisions of a company, different locations, different profit centers, and all of that. So if you had one tax ID but 2 different entities, same bank account and all of that, then you would use the class feature.
Different bank accounts.
Well, you can, again, the key driver is the tax ID. So if you had separate bank accounts, you just set up 2 bank accounts in the QuickBooks. So the driver is, because the tax ID is, again, as I touched on earlier, you're going to generate reports to give to your accountant to compare your taxes. So by having those 2 entities under your DBA in the one QuickBooks file, you're going to generate your P&L and your balance sheet, and both of those entities are going to be populating those 2 reports. And you give that to your accountant and you're all done. So it's the tax ID, the tax return distinction that determines whether you have another company file or not. This section here is for the chart of accounts. This list has expanded over time. What QuickBooks is asking is what type of entity are you? And if you notice on the right-hand side, my accounts are changing as I'm going down here. So there's construction trades. So here's all the various accounts. So if you were in a construction trade, then you just hit next. The other issue is if you're wanting to import a chart of accounts from another program or from your accountants, you can do that through Excel, and you would click Other or None at the bottom here, and then you could import it through Excel. So you do have the option of not using any of these lists. Now, what QuickBooks is going to ask me to do is to save the file, and it comes up with my company name, ABC Company, and that's going to save it as a QVW file, and I hit save, and I'm ready to go. So either you completed the interview and you hit save and ready to go, or you skip the interview and you're going to do some of the things I'm going to show you.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I noticed that my QuickBooks says you can save QuickBooks, sounds like it's on the internet, where files and stuff. There's a cost to it.
The question I believe you're asking is about online backup. QuickBooks does have an online backup feature. There's a monthly cost to it, and it stores it in a remote location. What I would say is that if we were attacked, nuclear attack, we might be gone, but your data's going to be fine. It's going to be in 3 locations a mile underneath. So,
That's the best way to save it, is what comes.
well, that's a great way to save it if you want to pay a monthly fee. I'm going to go over backing up in a little bit. I'll show you what I generally do. Yes?
Quick question, chart of accounts, does also display a numeric value, or is it all just a description of the account?
QuickBooks, you asked about the chart of accounts, whether there's a numeric value attached to it or not. In the preferences, it will ask you, do you want to number your accounts? If you say yes, it will attach numbers to them. Yes?
If you don't see your industry there and you put in what it is in the none, what happens to the account side? Is it blank, or do they show you every account possible?
It's blank.
So that's,
So you can create it from scratch.
figure out what your account.
Right. So generally, the only way you do that is, again, if you had a list you wanted to import, because any of those lists are customizable. So if you see something close, it's got 20 out of the 30 accounts you want, then just bring it in and then just customize it from there. And I'm going to show you how to do some customization. So when I hit finish, it would create the company file and be done. So we're going to get out of that. So when you finish with the interview, QuickBooks will have created everything for you to be able to start using QuickBooks. The other way to do it, so when I skip the interview, I go through what I call the preferences. And basically that's what QuickBooks do, is it's going through each of the preferences and asking you questions about those and then setting up QuickBooks accordingly. So if you're like, I don't feel like going through the interview, I just want to go through the preferences, then this is another way to set up your books. And this is the screen that pops up. So on the left-hand side is basically every preference within QuickBooks. And then in the middle here, there's a My Preferences tab and a Company Preferences tab. The My Preferences is if you had a half a dozen users in your company, the My Preferences would vary for each of those 6 users. The Company Preferences would impact everyone equally. So the My Preferences is individual customization, the Company Preferences is company-wide customization. So what I tell people is, go through each one of these, hit the, like you click on accounting, click the My Preferences, Company Preferences, go through each of the choices and make sure they're checked off or set up the way that you want to do. That's the other way to set up your company.
So you can put all of them?
Yes. So let me show you that. I'll start with the sales tax one. So edit, preferences, and then down here is sales tax. So as you see here on this tab, there are no personal preferences. Okay, so there's nothing you can individually customize here. It's all company-wide. So when do you owe sales tax? As of invoice date on the accrual basis or upon receipt of payment on the cash basis? So that's what you would do, is you would go into QuickBooks, and if your accountant says you need to be on the cash basis, you would just click that, and from that date going forward, you will have a cash basis sales tax record. But it will not change anything going backwards.
But I can change it going forward, right?
Correct, that would be going forward.
Even though this year's start.
Right. So for January and a little bit of part of February, you're on the accrual basis, and your accountant will have to help you adjust for that. But from going forward, we'll do it properly on a cash basis. And so one of the questions QuickBooks would ask during the interview is, do you charge sales tax, yes or no? So if you said yes, it would check off yes and have you set it up accordingly. Sales tax is a little complicated to set up, but again, there's a lot of help through it. But it is one of the more complicated things to set up within the program. So at the top, you have accounting. So My Preferences is just about general journal entries. And then the company preferences, here you see use account numbers. So that would have been asked during the interview to use account numbers, and you said yes, this should be checked off. Here's class tracking, what we talked about before. If you have DBA with multiple entities for your DBA, or if you have divisions or locations. One thing I want to point out here specifically is the closing date. For any of you who have worked with larger companies and larger accounting packages, QuickBooks does not close. It's one of the lack of features that accountants hate, because in theory, if you have 10 years worth of data in your books, you can go back to 1999 and delete invoices, do whatever you want, change anything, add things, delete things, change things. And by doing that, that would then impact everything going forward. And from the tax accountant's perspective, if you were giving them those reports to pay your taxes, it would change everything. That's why they hate it. Okay? Gives you all too much freedom to make their lives a nightmare. So one way to get around that is this set date password. If I click on that, it asks you a closing date. So we would type in, for now, for this tax year, we type in 12/31/08, and then you type in a password. Now, the best practice on this is, if you do have multiple users of your program, is that the data entry person should not have this password. Because in my experience, particularly the smaller the company, I have seen people say, one of the issues, it was kind of touched on earlier about using forms or journal entries or whatever. So people look back and go, oh, that invoice, I did it wrong, oh, that's a duplicate, I need to delete it. Well, it wasn't picked up on when the taxes were prepared, so the person wants to go back and delete that invoice. Taxes are already prepared, so that's not the best way to do it. So what I tell people, my clients, is if you need to change something from the previous tax year and the tax returns are done, call me. There's always a proper way to do it versus going back and deleting that invoice from that year, because that'll screw your books up. So if there are multiple people using the program, you've got a data entry, have the owner or have the accountant have the password so that you don't have to have that problem. If you're the owner and the data entry person and all of that, you're just a one-person entity, then you just have to be aware if that message pops up, if you override and allow the QuickBooks to make that change, it will affect your books. And I will tell you that depending on how many times you do that, your accountant will charge you quite a bit of money to go back and make things right. And they have to be right because they have to tie back to your tax return and all of that. So the best way to avoid all of this, put in the password and put in the closing date and don't override it and keep the password separate if you've got multiple people. Yes?
Do you mean that every year we should change the password?
You don't have to change the password, but you change the date. So you can keep this password the same, but then it would be 12/31/09 and 12/31/10, 2010.
Okay, now what about if I do need to go back, like with purchase orders and stuff, and get info from the year previous? Can I get the instructions and stuff that I have?
Yeah, you can get info. I'm talking about making changes. So deletions, additions, changes, all of that. You don't want to change data. So if the number was $1,000, you don't want to change it to 1,001 because that's going to mess everything up. But your data is all accessible. You can look at it. All of that. You just don't want to modify it. Yes?
So if you wanted to lock down a particular reporting period, even if it was a quarter or a month, and not have income statements restated through errors, you could use this feature each month?
Correct. The question was if you wanted to do something other than annual, could you use this feature to do that? I have a rather large client who wants to close their books monthly. So right now it would be 01/31/09. And then you would just roll it forward.
You can access data in retrospect. You just
Yes. This does not affect your access to data, it affects your ability to change the data. You can still change it by typing in the password, but it will prompt you to try and stop it. Checking. If you have multiple checking accounts, and most do, you have a savings, maybe a payroll account, and a checking account. QuickBooks, when you're writing checks, paying bills, and all of that, will open to a default account. So depending on how you set up your chart of accounts and the numbering or the alpha name of it, your preferred account may not be at the top of the list. So when you're writing checks, you may open up with a payroll account every time you're like, oh, geez, why? You have to change it every time. And here you can tell QuickBooks to say, well, every time that I open my write checks, I want it to open with the checking account. Every time I open the pay bills, I want to pick another account. Do my savings account or whatever. So you can tell QuickBooks when you're in particular money-oriented transactions what it defaults to. So it just will minimize error when you're putting in these if you have multiple accounts. In the upper left there in the My Preferences, it says pressing Enter moves between fields. When I'm doing data entry, I always tab to move between fields. Some people are comfortable, some other programs, you hit the Enter key and move between fields. The way it's set up by default, if you hit the Enter key, it'll close whatever form you're in. So if you're an Enter person, then you can check that off and hitting Enter will move you between data fields. Down here, automatically remember account or transaction information. This top choice will for example, if you have a landlord and your rent is $1,000 per month, then when you type in the landlord again, just say it's me, Frank Guinan. So let's say March 1st, 09, it'll remember rent $1,000 by checking that off. Okay. Otherwise, the bottom choice is only for vendors. This here is for all members. Customers, vendors, employees, other names. It's going to remember the last transaction that was put in, the dollar amount, and the account it is assigned to. So this way, we don't have to remember. Now, some people say, oh, I don't want to see it coming up for everyone because it varies. If you just wanted to do it for vendors, then you would pick the vendor choice on the bottom. I usually have people do the one on the top because it's just makes it easier so you don't have to remember. Anyone do 1099s? Anyone use QuickBooks for 1099s? Okay. Yeah, there's a great feature in QuickBooks for 1099s. And so if you click on this and you say, do you file 1099 miscellaneous forms? Yes. What some of you may not know is that you can use multiple accounts for your 1099. So typically as a contractor, the primary 1099 account would be your subcontractor account. Now, from what I understand, again, I'm not a CPA, but how I filed my 1099s for another company I'm involved in, technically you're supposed to send them to your lawyer, your CPA, and all of that. The state is just trying to crack down on making sure that everyone's reporting all their income. So in here, if you had subcontractor expense for what we all think are 1099able, you can also do multiple accounts and check off subcontractor, legal, and accounting, and whatever accounts would be applicable to populate the 1099. So you're not limited to just one expense account to put on your 1099s.
I don't understand why I have to get legal. Accounting, yes, but why would I have to do legal?
From what I understand, and again, I'm not a CPA, but any professionals, like me, if I did work for you, you'd have to send me a 1099. Okay? Although I'm not in the packaging business and I'm not providing any packaging services for you, corporations don't get 1099s, but I'm a sole proprietor, and it's all intended. Ultimately, what the state wants to do is to make sure that what I report on my tax return, say I make $50,000 a year, I've got $50,000 with 1099s.
Okay, but if I send it to my CPA, I still have to do a legal? I think I'm confused.
Well, it's well for the purpose. Your tax account will give you advice on who's supposed to get a 1099. My purpose in this is saying if you need to report 1099s for more than one account, QuickBooks can do that. That's the point of that. So as far as who's entitled to 1099, I'm not the guy. You can talk to your CPA on that. Okay, so that was preferences. So that's the, yes?
You're talking about if you wanted to have the number instead of typing it. What is the how would you do
The number?
Just get assigned account numbers?
Right. Oh, so that's, she's asking about the account numbering. We look at the chart of accounts here. See here, they're all alpha.
Right.
So you've just got this little diamond here and gift certificates and checking. So what QuickBooks will do is, if you number it, and I can do it very quickly. Go to Edit, Preferences, Accounting, use account numbers. Okay, see how it added the numbers?
Yeah.
And if you look in the setup of the account, basically what it does is it adds a number field up there. Well, some CPAs prefer it, and the larger the company, the best practice, the standard practice for setting up a chart of accounts is to have them numbered. There are uniform numbers, One is, yeah, so 1,000 is for assets, 2,000 for liabilities, and so on. So it's just a standard way of structuring the chart of accounts.
When you're entering it, then you would have to use the number?
No, you can type in, if I type in checking, checking will come up. So these are two separate fields. So if I type in 1,000, it will come up. If I type in checking, it will come up. So if we were in a, I checks here, I typed in 1,000, there's the 1,000, and if I typed in checking, here's checking. Okay? So you are.
There's no reason not to do it.
Well, I generally, for smaller companies, if the CPA is not requiring it, I generally don't recommend numbering, because if you come up with a new account and you've got, say, 1001 and 1002, and you want to get it in there alphabetically, then you have to change both of the numbers to accommodate it. So that's why I generally don't recommend it. It's just a hassle as you add accounts to try and squeeze them in. So.
Question, Frank?
Yes.
I know that I've been told that large companies use the numbers.
Correct.
Why does it benefit them more?
It doesn't necessarily benefit them more. It's just a standard best practice that accounting firms prefer, and it's just a quick look at a balance sheet. You see ones, you know their assets. Instead of having to read the specific accounts and all of that to try and decipher that. It's just a standard way of communicating and structure. All right. Okay, the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is the structure, the skeleton, or the foundation of your data entry. As I said, during the easy step interview, it will be created, but it is a fully customizable, fully modifiable list. The only time you are limited in customizing that list is if there are transactions already connected to it. So you can't delete an item in the chart of accounts if it already has transactions associated with it. Other than that, you can delete, change, do whatever.
Where do you get an error on that? You can't delete it and modify it, or do you want to be getting that?
Well, it depends on the type of error. If you had, say, rent expense, and you're like, whoops, those should have gone to rent expense, and you've got 6 months worth of transactions improper to rent expense and 6 months of proper transactions to rent expense. So the only way around that is to change those 6 months of transactions
What
from
about
that.
dollar amount?
Those are easily modifiable. You can change those. And if rent expense is proper, if the dollar amount is not, that can be changed. So here's the image of the chart of accounts. So what's true about QuickBooks is that for most every list, there's 3 buttons down at the bottom, and if you click on the leftmost button, this gives you all the manipulative features for that particular list. So you can see here, new to create a new account, edit it, delete it, make it inactive, and so on. You see there, import from Excel if you want to bring in your list from there. So if you go to the chart of accounts, I'll go down to account, new, I can set up a new one. Just for example purposes, I'll show you the checking. So the important thing is to pick the type. Actually, let me go back here. When you do a new one, QuickBooks gives you the screen and gives you all the various types of accounts. Again, this is where some people will mess up. When I'm working with people, I help them understand the type. Your CPA, if you work closely with them and you understand QuickBooks, they can help you with understanding the type. Again, this is where you get the negatives that I alluded to earlier, that people will categorize things as the wrong type. So the beautiful thing about this program is, again, a lot of explanation. So it's on the income. If I click on the income here, it gives me a general description of what an income account is. And if I click on more, it'll give me more detail on that particular topic.
Hey Frank,
Yes.
can you show us how you would import one from Excel?
No, I
No?
can do that. This one, that's an advanced topic, and it's not for this one.
Okay.
If I could break or that would take a little time, so maybe at 12 o'clock at the end of the session I could show that.
Okay.
So this gives you more information over here. And other account types, these are more the tricky ones. You have accounts receivable, other current asset, other asset, and so on. Just for a little quick education here. So from the other asset up here, it's just, these are set up according to length of conversion, liquidity conversion. So accounts receivable is a current asset and can be converted to cash theoretically in less than a year. Another current asset can be something other than receivables or bank accounts. Again, that can be convertible in less than a year to cash. Other asset is more of a long-term asset, like a fixed asset that has a life of greater than a year. Like a lot of times another asset would be like goodwill or intangible assets or something like that. Then from here down are your liability side. Accounts payable, your trade payables, those again are payable in less than a year. Other current liability, again, less than a year in their lifespan as a transaction. Long-term liability are long-term loans, and those would have repayment features, repayment terms greater than a year. So that's basically how this list works. I don't think they have any help on giving you any more information on that, but quite often QuickBooks will create some of these automatically. There are some instances like cost of goods sold as contractors. You would, for quite a few things that you would set up your QuickBooks for, you would use the cost of goods sold account. Those are basically direct job costs. So if I just pick income and then hit continue, then I would just type in the number if I'm using numbering and type in the account name. You can do sub-accounts if you wanted to have a grouping of accounts. The tax line mapping down here is if you have TurboTax and if you did your own taxes. QuickBooks does interface with TurboTaxing, so in here you tell it which particular tax line or the tax form that you use you want to connect to. And again, I don't think your CPA will give you help on that.
So
You give me your own
account
time.
names are not your list of accounts, so that's something entirely different. Customer accounts.
No, this account name I'm adding to my list of accounts, my chart of accounts. I'm creating a new one. I'm adding a new account, so
But I wouldn't put a customer's name into that account then.
no, you're adding it to this. So I would put in here, I could put in, like I said earlier, intangible assets. I could put, goodwill. I could put in a loan from the officer. I could put in, whatever account I needed to be able to track my transactions. That was not in this list here. So this is all about data entry.
Yeah, but each customer are
This has nothing to do with customers. This is your chart of accounts for data entry. So when you write a check, you have to tell QuickBooks, what should I put that against? What account? Is it rent? Is it office supplies? Is it insurance? Well, like I said, in the Easy Step interview, the bulk of this was created. So this is the instance where you want to modify them or you want to add to the list. You want to clean it up, you want to do something different. Yeah. Let me take off the numbering. Alright. That. Okay. QuickBooks files. So as I alluded to earlier, when I saved ABC Company, it had as the extension to that file QBW. The W, well, QB being obvious, QuickBooks. The W meaning working file. That's going to be the file that you'll be working on when you're inputting your checks, your deposits, and so on. So when you are done with the Easy Step interview and all of that, that's what it creates, is a QBW file. QuickBooks also has a backup file called QBB. Again, QuickBooks, B for backup. Now the thing about the QBB file is it's not meant for you to open and to work on. There's a process to take the information from the backup file to then use it to work on. It's really meant that if you drop your laptop or something happens to your QBW file, you have your backup file to restore your data. I'm going to spend a little time on this because many of us and myself have had experience with people who have lost all their data. So you have to understand that QBW file that you create, you have 5 years of data, 10 years of data. If you lose that QBW file and you don't have a good system of backing up, you've lost all your data. That QBW file is gone. Just because you have QuickBooks on your desktop doesn't mean you have that QBW file. You have the program file, so when you pop in the CD and install QuickBooks, there's a EXE file for QuickBooks, and then the QBW file is your data file. So if you dropped your laptop and smashed into a zillion pieces, you still have your QuickBooks program file that you can get from either the download or from the CD, but your data is gone if you haven't done the backing up properly. So that would be a disaster for any one of us in here if we lost years of data. So I'm going to spend a little time on this. So there's a variety of ways to back up. I think it was touched on earlier. QuickBooks does have an online backup feature. I think it's like $10 a month. You can purchase Carbonite, which is a Carbonite, Yahoo, Amazon. All of them have online backup features, which, like I said, if America suffered a nuclear attack, we'd be gone, but our data would be miles under the country, safe and secure in 3 different locations. So if that's important to you and you want a remote, very safe backup, then those services are great, and there's a lot of them out there. So again, you have QuickBooks that'll do it for you. You have Yahoo, Amazon, and a lot of other people. So that's one way of backing up. The other way of backing up is using one of these flash drives. These things are great. You can also use an external hard drive. Your QuickBooks file, this is half a gigabyte. This is 512 megabytes. It costs about $30, $40. Your QuickBooks file, again, I don't have a sense of company size in here, but I could probably guess most of you are the smaller size companies. Your data file probably won't be much more than 50 to 100 megabytes. So you could probably get away with buying a 256 megabyte memory stick, okay? And that would be more than adequate. For those of you who are larger, and to help you define larger, if you have half a dozen plus employees, you're close to $1 million in sales, you probably have some more formal backup procedures in place. You probably wouldn't use one of these. You probably have using Carbonite or some other kind of remote backup. But for us smaller companies, this is great. So you can get this at Staples. You just pop it into any USB drive, which most computers have at least half a dozen of these. So you just pop it in the side. The key thing here is to have some kind of external backup. I don't recommend CDs. If I back up today and went to any of your offices, I could take my backup, plug it into your computer, and be up and running. CDs not necessarily, depends on the formatting program you use to format your CDs. I found that out the hard way a few years ago. Backed up a CD on my computer, went to someone's, and it was incompatible. And sometimes there's some quirks. There's a couple steps to back up from QuickBooks to the CD. I think there's a 2-step process, and some people miss the second step. So to get CDs, I highly recommend either an external hard drive or the thumb drive. But the point is, if I left here today and I slipped up there and my laptop smashed, I'd be able to get my data back through this thumb drive. Yes? In the back?
Correct me if I'm wrong, you just said that you can use somebody else's computer and be up and running.
Correct.
So is there a way, like if my information is stored at work, am I able to back up on my computer, go home and work from there?
Correct, yeah. Through the process I'm going to show you, yeah.
So I can just put it on her computer, what I have on mine too.
Yes.
Does this do all programs, or does you have to have one for Excel and one for QuickBooks and one for Word, or what?
Correct. So a couple questions here. One is, what I'm going to demonstrate now, will this give you the ability to take the information from here and use it on your home computer? And the answer is yes. And then I also recommend to people using this or an external hard drive, back up anything and everything, your Word documents, your Excel documents, your family pictures, and all of that. Because if your computer dies, you get a virus or you get a power surge, like this time of year, storms, power surge will fry your hard drive, and it's all gone. So this will have it on another location that you can recover it.
But
when
you
you're-
need a different stick for each
No.
section.
No, this is-
Just do it.
Right, this is half a gigabyte, and I store a lot of my, well, actually I have an external hard drive at home, but if I wanted, I could store a lot of personal stuff on here as well. I store customer data files in here when I'm going back and forth.
You have to pull up in the system each program to do it, download it.
Yes, on the other system, you'd have to have those programs. You'd have to have Excel, you'd have to have QuickBooks and all of that to be able to do it.
But do I have to enter into Excel to back it up too, or just stick this in, it'll copy it?
That's a little more complex. You can set up automatic backups to back up a variety of data onto these sticks. But for QuickBooks purposes, what I'm going to show you now is just backing up QuickBooks. So you can back up whatever you want. It's just there's a variety of ways to do that. So in here, when I tell people when you plug in your stick here, just make a mental note of the drive. So this is telling you this is the F drive. If I had something else plugged in here, it could be the D drive. It could be the E drive. Okay? It'll alphabetically increment according to how many other devices you have in the USB ports. So sometimes you may plug it in, and right now it's the F drive. If I put something else in, it would change. But wait a second, wasn't it F drive before? So just keep a mental note of the alpha assignment. So then I would go up here to File, Save, Copy, or Backup. And the default is Backup Copy. Then I hit Next. So there's your top choice for the online backup if you were set up for that through QuickBooks. But we're going to do a local backup here. And then you have your options. Okay? So tell us where to save your backup copies. Oh yeah, Frank told me to make a mental note of that. That was the F drive. Okay. So I browse here. And my F drive. And let's see, my computer. It's not showing. Okay. Let me go back in. There it is. So if it doesn't show, you just get out and get back in and it will show it. So I click on my F drive. And that'll be my default backup location. So you may get an error if you have multiple things plugged in here because then this may be the E drive. So it's going to be looking for the F, but it could be the E. So be aware of that possibility. Then I have people make sure that the box here, add the date and time of the backup. That will date stamp it. So right now it's 9:40 on February 5th. So do ABC Company.QBB February 5th at 9:40. If I backed it up 10 minutes from now, it would be February 5th, 9:50. So there would be a variation. Hold your question for a sec. There'd be a variation for each time you save it. This feature here says, okay, I want to limit the number of copies in here because in theory it would be unlimited because it would be varied by date and time. So you're saying, I only want 3 of them in there at a time. I generally recommend that you have 5. So one for each day of the work week. This has so much space on it, it can't hurt to have 5 versus 3. Because the risk you take, QuickBooks has come a long way in eliminating the risk of data corruption. But in theory, if you backed up and your data was corrupt for whatever reason, and then you went to restore, then you wouldn't have anything to restore from. So if you had 4 other backups, you could grab from one of those other 4. And in theory, not knowing when the corruption took place, you know, you've got 2 or 3 that are corrupt. So the more the better. And your data, your stick here will hold plenty of them. I also recommend, it says remind me to back up when I close my company file. You know, I recommend to say 1 every time, and then this would be 5. And then you would hit OK. And then I would hit finish, and it would then back up my data. Now, when it comes up every time, you don't have to hit that options button. You have the backup copy, hit finish, and it would back it up automatically to the stick. Okay? So, you had a question in the back?
When the file's gonna be dated anyway. So
Did you
why-
say that again?
Excuse me, the file's gonna have a date on it anyways, so,
Well, it's going to have a Windows indication of date, but it's not going to vary it. So if you had ABC Company, without checking off that box here,
I mean, when you look at the file itself, it's gonna say what date, what time you stuck it on the stick.
right, but it's not going to vary it. So if I didn't check off that box and I backed it up, it would back it up to abccompany.qbb.
Oh,
I
yeah,
went and did it
that
tomorrow, the
makes sense.
ABC Company would say it already exists, you want to overwrite it.
Okay, I got you.
And I've seen that. I've seen some people that go, that I've trained in this, and I'll look and I'll see that, well, you only have one backup in here. How long have you been doing that for? So the risk that happens is, if that was corrupt and they drop their laptop, they're out of luck. So you should have some variation here so you have at least multiple files. So it will have a date in one of the columns in Windows, but that's not, it won't vary. It's the same file over and over and over you're backing up.
My other question is, that's 2008, I don't see, when you hit backup, I didn't see create a portable file. Do they not have that in 2008?
I think they do. It should. It might not, maybe it's a 2009.
Yeah.
This well, actually, I'm in 2008, so it should
Right.
be in your 2008.
Well, I'm using 2007 right now, but I have a 2009. But the 2007 has created a company, portable company file. But I didn't see it when you put down.
I think it was here.
Was it?
Portable, it's the second choice.
Okay. All right, my glasses.
Way in the back. Couldn't see it.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the.
Yeah. All right, yes.
So if I stick the stick in, it doesn't back it up, I have to go through all this steps.
Correct. Yeah.
See, I've been just sticking the stick in, thinking it's backing it up.
No, you have to get it. You have to tell it. Yeah. So when you get home today, follow this process. Did someone else have, you had a question?
So, when I put my hard drive,
Yeah.
it says you, file number you want to override. Does it say no?
It depends. When you go to save it, are you typing in anything new? No. Yes, you should. So obviously, you might only have one file in there in theory that you've just been overriding over and over and over and over. So what version do you have?
The date on it, that you're backing up, is created on the
Correct. What version do you have?
5.
2006. So that they do have, I believe they have this option in here, but they might not have this limitation here. So what I tell people to do in that case is you would do ABC Company Monday, ABC Company Tuesday, ABC Company Wednesday, for however many days a week I would recommend the 5. So today's Thursday, so if you did ABC Company Thursday today, and then next week, it would say already exists. So as long as you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you say go ahead override it, because I know I've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. All right? Another key point, QuickBooks has pointed out that there have been problems with data corruption if you don't remove this properly, okay? Your external hard drive or your thumb drive. Right now my thumb drive has a blue light on it, okay? It means it's engaged, okay? So if I go down here to the right, safely remove hardware, it's a little green arrow down here, and I click on it, it's going to say I can remove my hardware. Now, QuickBooks has acknowledged that if you don't do this, in some instances, not all, because sometimes the light won't go out for me, and I will know one easy way, if the light doesn't go out, just shut the computer down and then the light will go out. But I have at times, because I'm experienced, know that there's not an issue. I've removed it and I haven't had a data corruption issue. But the best practice for all of you is when you're done backing up, do what I just did, make sure the light's out, and pull it out. If the light doesn't go out, shut the computer down, the light will go out, and then pull it out. Because you do risk that for some reason the program could still be engaged and you could have data corruption.
Could you show what was just shown before to do that?
Yeah, there's a green, they'll show a green icon down here in the system tray. You just click on it and it'll say safely remove, and you put that and then it'll go through the process. A lot of them now too, the newer ones, they have a built-in program that'll be in there that you click on. It'll say eject disk and all of that. So this is an older one. The newer ones have a slightly different process, but you would click down here to engage the removal of the drive. Now okay, so we all brought up the idea of saying, hey, great, I can back up on this at my office and then bring it home and restore it. Let me make a suggestion. Okay, that's one way to do it. Let me make a suggestion. Has anyone heard of logmein.com? How many have heard of it? Okay, a few of you. Well, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, truly. It's free, first of all, and I would qualify that by saying, do you all remember Net Zero? I signed up for Net Zero because why should anyone pay for the internet? Well, we're all paying for the internet now through them for whatever, $9.95 or $10. So right now it's free. I think eventually they'll charge. But while it's free, why not take advantage of it? What it gives you the ability to do is if you sign into logmein.com, you can access your computer with QuickBooks on it anywhere in the world. So when I was in Disney this past fall, I got onto my computer, I looked at my QuickBooks, I looked at my Microsoft Outlook and all that for free. It was awesome. So instead of doing this and going home and risking overriding your data and just the hassle of the back and forth, if you have a login, you can go home, log into login, and access your office computer from home. And then if you're on vacation and all of that, you can access it and print invoices or check your email or do whatever. So I strongly recommend that as an option.
We'll go through steps and then
Yeah, it's very, 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 very easy. It's great.
So
And
you
it's,
can go to a wireless facility and just do it.
yeah, you can go to Starbucks. Beg your pardon?
Your computer has to be on.
Yes, your computer has to be on while you're gone, and make sure it doesn't go to sleep or anything like that. So if you have a technical person, they can help you make sure of that. But it's a great feature, and like I said, I have a lot of my clients using it, and it's currently free, and you should all take advantage of it. But if you chose not to do that, then what you would do is, I've done my backup, so I'm going to plug in my backup to my home computer. And shows it's the F drive. So then I'm going to go to File, Open or Restore Company. And the second choice here is Restore a Backup Copy. And I'm going to hit Next, and it's a local backup. Again, you can restore from a QuickBooks Online backup if you want it. I'm going to hit Next, and here I would pick the file that I'm restoring from on here. So a couple caveats about doing this. The reason I don't like this particular process is a couple of things. If you, I find this question asked mostly by owners. So they want to have the data and take a look at it over the weekend, kind of thing. And always the temptation for the owner is to generate a couple invoices or correct a couple invoices. So he or she takes it on a Friday, makes the changes over the weekend, doesn't come back into the office till Monday afternoon. The assistant, the spouse, whoever is working on the data has already done some data entry on Monday afternoon. So here you have two data files. The one he worked on and the one she worked on, both updated. QuickBooks will not merge them. They have to make a choice. Who overrides the other? Okay. So this restore feature will not take what he or she did over the weekend and merge it with the assistant, whatever they did on Monday morning. One would overwrite the other. Okay, so that's risk number one with that. The other risk is not thinking. The owner could say, okay, made my changes, the assistant went out to lunch, and he goes to restore, he would overwrite whatever she did. Now, if there were a variety of backups on this disk, you had half a dozen of them going back 6 months, he would overwrite with that. If you picked the wrong one, he would overwrite going back 6 months, and there'd be 6 months worth of data loss. So you have a lot of risk here. Now, the good thing about QuickBooks is it will prompt you. It's going to warn you all the way through. So if you're going in and restoring to abccompany.qbw, it's going to say, hey, that file already exists. You're going to overwrite it, and all your data is going to be lost. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? It's going to prompt you. So it's going to force you to go, oh, man, I'm not sure. Oh, wait, she's at lunch. She might have done some work. So it would prompt you to make you think before you did it. The easy way around it, and again, QuickBooks will give you this suggestion, I think it's the 2008 version going forward, will give you this recommendation. So you do, if you weren't sure, you type in ABC Company version 2, .qbw. So that way then you'd have two of them. You'd have the ABC Company and the ABC Company version 2. So if what you restored from was fine, you could get rid of the old one and you'd have the proper data. So that's one way around it if you had any doubt. So and QuickBooks will prompt you on that and give you the advice on that. So there's a lot of warnings in here if you're using this particular feature to keep you from screwing up. But like I said, I wouldn't recommend this because there is a high risk of screwing up and losing a lot of data. Okay, show you the removal process. Yeah, you want to see here? So there's that green icon, so it says, when I hover over it, it says safely remove hardware. Come on. No, it did. But I click on it, safely remove USB mass storage device, click on it, my light goes out, it says safely remove hardware, I'll put out and I'm fine. Okay? So there'll be some variation of that on your system. Here's the warning. To prevent overwriting an existing company file, be sure to rename the file in the next window. For example, you may want to add a date or version number such as my company name January 2nd 2007.qbw or my company name version 2.qbw. So that's part of the prompt when you're doing that process. Okay, any other comments, questions?
I have a hard drive too, but I don't even know how to use it. Is it automatically backing it up?
Nothing's automatic. No, you have to do it yourself. So, that's how they do it. So it sounds like you would need someone to kind of direct you in that.
Because Barb is stable, thinks you just plug it in and
No. What'd you say? Oh yeah, push the easy button. There you go. Yeah. Well, you heard of the easy button? It's a big red button by Staples. Hit the easy button. So he's just making a joke. No, just hit the easy button over there. All right. Again, another image here. Is this guy having a great time or what? Yes. Down south, he's in a convertible and he's hooting and hollering and having a great time. So that's the image I want to etch in your mind about QuickBooks' attempt to have you be able to get around the program with ease. There's a zillion ways to do a lot of the functions within QuickBooks. It's according to what you're comfortable with. So I'm going to show you some of those particular ways and some of my preferences that I've gotten accustomed to over the years. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to open the data file. There's a few ways to do that. Primarily the best way to do it is to double-click on the QuickBooks icon that's sitting on your desktop, just like Excel and Word and all of that. Now, what I've seen some people do, and QuickBooks has features in now to keep you from doing it, but for those with older versions and all that, what I've seen people do is they'll put their QBW file on their desktop, and they double-click that to open the program. I don't recommend that, and they don't, in the newer versions, they try and keep you from doing that. They'll give you warnings. Because the risk you have, particularly for any of us with teenagers or young kids, is, for a shared home office computer, the risk you have is that that can get deleted or corrupted. So what QuickBooks will do automatically in the later versions is put that QBW file in a safe place. So let QuickBooks put the QBW file where it wants for the newer versions. The older versions, if you've been double-clicking and opening up the QBW file, I recommend not doing that. Move the QBW file and just use the icon to initiate the program. One of the features within QuickBooks that what I generally seen some people do is if they have multiple companies, they'll shut QuickBooks down, they'll reopen it, and open up the other company. QuickBooks does have a feature, this Open Previous Company, where you can have a choice of up to 20 companies that you can choose from that you can switch back and forth. So if we go up here, go to File, Open Previous Company. I don't know how many's here. There's like 12 or something. So QuickBooks is not like Excel or Word in which you can just switch between documents. But this is the closest thing to it. If I was like, okay, well, this afternoon we're going to be doing Rock Castle construction, so I click on that. So what QuickBooks does is it goes down on its own through its shutdown and restart process without you having to go through the steps. It's a little quicker. So this is the better way to do it. And if you wanted to say, well, yeah, I work with a half a dozen companies. If you hit the set number of previous companies down here, oh, it's set to the max 20. You said, well, I only have 6 companies that I work with. You can select 6, and only 6 will come up in the list.
Excuse me, Frank.
Yes.
I don't know if this has anything to do with what you're talking about, but every time I open up QuickBooks, it says switch user.
Switch user?
Yeah. I don't know why it does that. I don't have like 2 companies in there or anything like that. Just keep saying switch user. And then I don't have a retry button.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's, I don't believe that's a QuickBooks thing. That's a Windows thing. It means when it's booting up, it's having problems initiating the program because I'm not sure if it has to do with your internet connection or has to do with whatever else you have going on at the other time. But if that's coming up a lot, that's a problem. So you might want to. So you probably have, what do you have to click switch user a few times or retry a few times, or?
I just shut that down and continue. Sometimes it will go. Sometimes it does.
Okay.
But it only does it when I open QuickBooks. It doesn't do it when anything else.
Okay. I've seen that, but I don't see it a lot. And it's usually when there's computer issues. So if it happens a lot, and you have a technical person, they might be able to help you diagnose that. Yes.
Isn't that when does anybody else use a QuickBooks program other than you?
No, but previously, there was a previous expired there from like 2003.
But I mean, isn't that like if they're, sometimes like if I have a file open and then I have another company file open because I'm doing something else with it, and then I forget that it's still open and I go to do it, it'll say it's being used by somebody else who want to be in the
That's a different
multi-user.
message. She's citing a different message.
But I've seen the switch user thing too in QuickBooks.
Is it multiple or single user?
Yeah, we're talking about a couple issues here. If you have, we talked about the one license, okay? So you purchased QuickBooks once, and you've installed it on multiple computers, and I try and access it on one computer, someone accesses it on the other computer, it's going to come up with a message saying someone else is using the program, you need to have them exit or purchase multi-user so you can use it simultaneously. That's a different message than what she's talking about. That's more to do with, I'm not sure the exact process, but it's trying to, I'm not sure it's trying to access the internet.
Like
it's
software
trying-
fighting each other.
it could be. I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I've seen it, and in my experience, it hasn't been chronic. But if it's chronic for you, then again, I think that's more of a computer issue than a QuickBooks issue. Okay. So there's a variety of ways to get around the program, and the 3 primary ones are using menus, the icon bar, and the home page. Menus are like any other program. You have the menu choices along the top. You click on any of the menu choices, and then that has a sub-menu, which then connects to another sub-menu. So that's one way to get around the program, just like any other program. The icon bar happens to be my favorite because it's customizable. So anything and everything I want to use regularly, I can put on the icon bar. So let me show you that. All right, so all these are icons. So you click on any one of these, this will get you to the particular function you want to work on. And some of these are default. So when you install the program, getting up and running, some of these will come up automatically. Oop, Castle, let's switch. Carl. Well, if you don't have an icon bar, you go up here and view icon bar, view navigation bar. Okay, and it usually comes up by default. So I don't know why someone would have had to uncheck it to have it down up here. But if you didn't want to see the navigation bar, you put that. If you didn't want to see the icon bar, you put that and they're gone. But in this case here, I'm going to put it back. So if I wanted to look, if you wanted to customize this, you go up to View, Customize Icon Bar, and for example purposes, I'm just going to get rid of all of them so I can delete them all. Now if I wanted to add, here's a listing of the ones I can add from here. So if I'm always creating invoices, I can hit Create Invoices. See how it added the icon up here? I'm going to add and say I'm going to enter bills. Hit OK. And a little known feature is that QuickBooks has a built-in calculator. So if I hit OK, there it is. Now if I wanted to move these around and change the order, I can grab invoice with that four-headed arrow over the diamond and drag it down and change the order. Now what I've done for some people, depending on what industry you're in, you can create a series of icons for processes that you have for your company that follow a logical order. I had a real estate company that I worked for that had, the whole process from receiving money on deposit on a particular property to closing the property and everything in between. So there was an icon for each step of the process. So they have a logical flow of their money flow up on the icon bar. So that's one way you could use it. If you're in any particular feature, like I'll go into, let's go into record deposits, and I want it on my icon bar, I can go up here and I can go View, Add Make Deposits to the icon bar. So I don't necessarily have to go to that list. And not everything is in that list. So if you're on a screen and saying, I want to be able to have that at ready access, then you would just go up to the View button and add it accordingly. The other great feature, particularly for you owners, managers that want to see regular reports, because the way to get reports is either through the Report Center or through the Reports menu. So if I am in here and I'm in sales, and I'm going to show you this later. So if I have it customized and I'm like, I want to see this regularly, I don't have to go through all those steps I just did. You can go up to View, Add Sales by Customer Summary to the icon bar, hit OK. So now everything, all those steps I just went through, I click that, and there's my report. Okay? So if you have favorite reports, this icon bar is a great way to have clickable, ready access to anything favorite within the program. Now over here on the left side is the active windows you have. So you can switch in between whatever you're working on by clicking on here instead of, again, going through the process of the menu or going back to the home page. If you want to get rid of those, if you hit Window, Close All, now you're basically starting all over and you can go to the home page. Now the home page is a great modification. 2005 does not have the home page. This is 2006 and later, and I love the home page. It took me a little while getting used to it, but once I got used to it, I understand the logic of it. I always tell people when they're using the program, they're getting a little overwhelmed on particular things they're working on. They have a lot of things going at once. You're not sure what to do next. I tell them to go home. So you can click on the upper right, left, right. Then you can click on the upper left to go home, and it'll bring you back to the screen. So pretty much any and every feature that you want to use in the program is on the screen. Now it's broken up between vendors at the top, customers in the middle, employees at the bottom, company at the top, right, and banking. Then over here you have all your accounts. So these are all your credit card and bank accounts. And you can double click on any one of these to get into your particular account register. So this gives you at a glance your balances. So if I click on here, Vendor Center, I'm into my vendors. If I want to enter a bill, I'm into my enter bill. And the other key thing to understand about this is that these lines are not random, but they're defining relationships. So if you're going to use the payables feature in QuickBooks and you enter in bills, follow the line, you've got to use the pay bills feature. Okay? What a lot of people will do is they'll enter a bill and then they'll write a check. And what will happen is these will show as unpaid. Now again, QuickBooks does have a warning feature in it, and people ignore it, but it'll tell you if you go to write a check, it'll say, well, this bill's already in here for this vendor, why don't you go to the pay bills feature, because otherwise these bills are going to show as unpaid. So it'll prompt you on that. Same thing with invoices. If you use invoices, you'll get people who will record deposits from their customers. They'll use this feature. If you follow the line, you're supposed to use received payments, because if you don't, then this will show as unpaid. And I don't think there's an internal warning when you record a deposit that there's invoices in there. I don't think there is. So, and for you contractors for this afternoon, the QuickBooks has the capability of taking your transactions from your material suppliers, your subcontractors and all that, taking that and putting it on a customer invoice. So that defines your relationship there. Also with time, you can take time data from your employees and your vendors and then put it on a customer bill. So that's the defined relationship there. So again, everything I come through, this is customizable. If you use estimates, you can indicate that, and estimates will show up here. POs, if some of these things you don't use, you can have them not appear. You also, like I said, if you click on your checking account here, this will open up your checking register. Okay.
Where is the checking, if you want to customize this home page? Where do you do that?
That's up in Preferences. Edit. I'm not sure if there's a button here. There might be a button like down here. No. Go up to Edit, Preferences, Desktop View, and Company Preferences. So I don't want to see sales receipts. I want to turn estimates on. Okay? Well. So the general recommendation is, when in doubt, when you're not sure of the next step in any particular feature you're using, go home and follow the lines. Basically. Okay? Yes?
So it's hard to go to the, skip, entering bills, you go to the check register.
Correct. We'll be going over that.
And pay it that way.
Yes. We'll be going over that. You don't have to use the Enter Bills feature. All I'm saying is if you do use it, you have to make sure that you use the Pay Bills feature. Support resources. This is one of QuickBooks' strengths. I'm a paid-for example of support. QuickBooks has a co-advisor database, so not knowing what towns you are all from, if you typed in their database and gave your zip code, it would give you, by distance, all people like me who can help train you and help you work with QuickBooks, and it'll give you the distance from your location, they'll bring you to their website. I mean, it's just really great. So that's one level of support. The non-paid for types of support are excellent, and they have a ton of them. There's a new, that I didn't put on here, a new live community with QuickBooks, which is kind of like a social network for QuickBooks users. I haven't heard much feedback about it, but I know the intent is that it's a free resource, that if you're having problems with QuickBooks, you can type in questions, and other users can give you feedback about whatever you might be struggling with. QuickBooks has built-in tutorials. This is the Learning Center. This will come up automatically. This box will be checked off, show this window at startup, unless you tell it not to. And the nice thing about this is that it will go through every major feature of QuickBooks. See that overview and setup? It's basically following the process I'm going through today. Customers and sales and so on. And then each of those blue links will bring you to a video or audio tutorial. And it will tell you the time of each of those tutorials. I mean, if you learn by these kinds of tutorials, there's really nothing better than this. This will really go a long way towards helping you use the program properly. One of my favorite types of help is the context-sensitive help. So depending on what you're working on at any given point, QuickBooks will give you additional instruction for whatever you're struggling with and give you a variety of topics. So for example, I'm in Enter Bills. And I want to get help, so I go to Help, QuickBooks Help, and you see here, it's giving a list. I can see a video, enter a bill for items, what if I already paid a bill, ways to pay bills, and so on. So if I click on that, it'll give me the help topic down here below, and all the blue links will give me more information. Now if I switch over and I go on Invoices, watch the right screen, it switches my help topics. So early on, when you're using the program, you might want to keep that up on the right-hand side. And just as you're working through and going from screen to screen, the help topics will change.